All right, we're doing an install video on a Ford PX3 Ranger bull bar Predator bar. Taking this cover off with all the little clips underneath. Bolt there, all the way down in there. And all of these from underneath. Then bolt up in here on the side. We take these clips off. We got the bolts out from the side here, especially the one from underneath here, and we just pull it. So we're going to go all the way along and make sure we unplug the fog lights and the sensor loom. And pulling the grill out, you got the clips all the way underneath. Boom. Once the grill's out, 2 clips per side here, go for it. And now we can pull the whole bumper. Whoops, how good was that? There we go. Now we'll unplug the fog lights and the sensor loom. Taking these under brackets off. Removing the foam on the front. This front crash bar comes off. Push that little clip out. Take those bolts off. Undo the radar here. We will be putting the radar back in the bar. We'll relocate this up on here. This is your digital antenna. Where it goes. These black sections here will get removed as well. So for taking this black panel off here, there's a couple clips. Get behind with your trim tool or a screwdriver. And when you're from behind, you can press the little release clips, and one last little one there. Off she comes. Bash plate comes off with 2 bolts from underneath, and we're gonna remove these. Inside there is a little clip. See that white clip? You're just gonna move it away from the chassis rail, pop it out, and the whole thing pulls out.
Here's your extra limbs. Extra, like,
fitting the recovery points, you have a nut plate on the stem. You feed the nut plate through the center of the chassis and you bolt to the outside. A little trick, maybe, if you want to put a vice grips to hold the nut plate which goes inside. And you have the tow hooks. Make sure you use spacer in between. Do the back one, then the front one. And on the left-hand side here, you do have an extra bolt that goes through on the bottom. All right, we're gonna prepare the bumper. What we need to do, this one we're gonna reuse the fog lights, so we're gonna remove the fog lights and we're gonna take out the sensors and the sensor loom because all that gets reused. So to pull the sensors out, there's 2 little clips here. Pull them apart, the sensor comes out, and then the sensor housings in 2 pieces. All right, we've undone all the clips that were securing the loom in, so the loom is free. And now, to move a sensor housing, you pinch the inside and push it through. All right, putting the impact absorbers on the mounts. Basically, you put the mount on like this. You can see the sticky out bit there, like my technical term, that goes on the inside. Using the M10 hardware, like that. Oh, look at that, perfecto. So there's 2 threaded nuts already that you can start it, and then you use nuts and bolts between the mounts, and then we're going to measure between the uprights on the bull bar, and we'll adjust the mounts left and right until we get a nice fitting brackets on. All right, so the bracket goes like that. You'll put a nut through the center of the chassis. Just hold it with your finger, and you put one through there. Obviously, these 2 on the bottom here line up with those 2 slots there. And the one above lines up with there. This is the adaptive cruise radar. So we reuse pretty much most of it, but we got to get it off this back mounting bracket. To do that, you see these little tabs here that hold it on, and it rotates around there. We'll pull it down so we can take the bolts. All right, you can see the ball joints here. Pull those out, and there's this last adjustment screw, same ball joint. We're just gonna pull that out. See if I can do it on camera. Oh yes, look at that. So, don't use that anymore, discard that. This is gonna get relocated into the bull bar, and we're gonna mount it using the existing
Make sure you got the tall enough ones, because this gap here can be different sizes. And the small ones, like what these are, I don't know if they're gonna go in.
Don't say that on video. This is how you put the cage nuts in when you're getting ready for the bar. Maybe get your noggin out of the way this time.
Sorry.
Oh, so easy. Ooh. All right, we feed the sensor harness into the bar. So you have to start and feed it all from this side first because your main plug won't go all the way through. So you can see all the sensors going in, reaching where they need to go. These ones in the center obviously have to go towards the center, so you'll see they point like that. So when you put the sensor housings in, you gotta make sure they can point the right direction. The sensor in, housing, front housing goes in, rear housing clip together, then take the little sensor. Oh, look at that. That's how it's done. Sensor all in, make sure they're all lining up the right direction. Use this hydraulic table to fit the bar on, so we cheat a little bit. You can lift it on by hand, but this table makes it so easy. As you can see, you just need to slide the bar on the inside of the mount. Push it on a little bit more. You'll line up the holes, put some bolts in, and the bolts will just hold into position. And then we're gonna make sure we get the gaps there good. You want about a 20 mil gap so the bar doesn't hit the body, and that's because their body's on body rubbers and your bar is mounted directly to the chassis. So if you don't have a 20 mil gap, it will crush your side panels. Positioning the bar, like I said, you want about a 20 mil gap in there, and we've just set the infills on to make sure we can get a 20 mil gap there. So you'll do up one bolt on the left and the right to make sure you can get the gap that you want. Like I said, you need about a 20 mil gap. That's looking pretty good. So you can see this side. All right. And coming around to the other side. So we've measured there, and we have a 19 mil gap on this side and 20 on the other side. I think 1 mil is pretty good. So the bar is basically on now. So what we're doing is we've got a Runvo winch here. We're gonna rotate the gearbox, clock it forward slightly, so it makes it easier to get the free spool lever. So while Ben's doing that, I'm gonna fit the adaptive cruise onto the bracket that goes onto the mesh panel. So the mesh panel basically will mount this bracket. So we need to get this onto this. So you got these little plastic holders here, which the ball joints are in. So we're just gonna cut them off and put bolts through to mount it to these 3 holes here. All right, there we go. It is all fitted on the bracket, ready to mount onto the mesh panel. The mesh panel in, the adaptive cruise in the mesh panel. You can see bolted right in, so that mesh panel is ready to go on. We've got the winch sitting there, and the bolts underneath. Normally with most winches, you just leave the control box on top of the winch and you can access it, but unfortunately Runva's a bit silly, and Runva has the access point for the hand control on top, which makes it really difficult. So we are going to use Runva's brackets and put it beside the winch over there. That way you can still plug it in. Fitting the factory fog lights, we need to trim that and that off to allow it to fit nicely in our little bracket. All right, here you go. Fog light mounted in the bracket. So this is the right hand mesh panel. Little R there for the right hand. So it's gonna go, sorry, one-handed. Basically, that slot's gonna line up with that hole. And like that, and then you put 2 M8 bolts through there, hold those in first, and then we'll wait to put the 4 around here when we put it in there. And we got the 2 M8s there. You can see the bottom bolts lining up. So we're gonna feed that in from behind. Watch out for the fog light or the wiring loom from the sensor. And we're gonna line up the bolts on the bottom. Put the M6 bolts in. And bang. 4 button head cap screws with the washers, and we will plug the fog light in, and that side is done. All right, we got the left hand one in, so we need to plug in the fog light and the sensor loom. Don't forget to do that. All right, we've just put the center light bar in. Just feed it through from behind, around the wire and loom. There you go, bolt down. Easiest way is to hold the nut in position and then feed it through with the bolt. And then we will line it up square and tighten it. All right, so I went ahead of myself a little bit too much last time and took that other bolt off there. So these little L brackets here are used to hold the number plate flip. So you use a little plastic spacer in between, little bush. And you're gonna do up the nylock just enough so you can lift the number plate up and it stays up. And for this one, make sure you put the fair lead on before you mount the whole mesh panel. Bolts for the fair lead will be supplied with the fair lead. You can see we've got number plate flip there, which will tension up when it's actually on. And then you gotta make sure you feed the cable through the fair lead first, and the top of the mesh panel bolts up there, and the bottom bolts under there. You can see those holes there. All right, now we put the under panel in. Now this lip here goes on the inside of the bar, not the outside. Don't make that mistake. So you put the two M6s here. This one's a little bit tough because it's right behind the sensor, but trust me, it goes. And you have the bolt there. Mesh, put the center mesh in first. I like to put the bolts down the bottom. You can see in there. And then we'll start tightening them all up. So don't put the two down the bottom here yet, because the bolts for the bash plate hold that in. The grill in, just feed it in. Locate at the top up here. And then our little grill brackets are gonna hold the bottom in. I'll show you do that now. The under panel, you can see where it goes. Now, or sorry, the inner fender liner, we're gonna put the under panel on now. So that lip of the panel holds the fender liner into place. So use the M6 button heads in the cage nuts we had fun with before. We'll hold it all into place. Nice and tight. We put the bash plate up, so we got the longer M8 button heads going through. Your shim goes in between, and do up your bolts from there. And underneath, we're gonna line up that one with that one, put the M10, and the factory bash plate is gonna mount that one all the way to the bottom underneath where those two ones are there. If you leave those hanging off a little bit, your bash plate can hold onto them, the factory skid, and then you can put another M10 through there. Factory skid plate in, do up the bolts, you can see looking good there. Don't forget to put your compliance plate. This is where I like to stick it, so it's not in your face, but if you want to show authorities, you've got it. And don't forget to put your Offroad Animal logo on. Gotta represent. And to finish off, we'll put the cover plate back over and put the little plastic clips in, and we're looking good.